this is dedicated to the community builders, to the change makers, to the creators. These are the ordinary folks who commit to building extraordinary communities. They wake up early in the morning, they stay up late at night to make our communities better and make ourselves better, happier, more connected. This story is not just my own, it's all of ours. It's the story of anyone who commits to embracing doubt, risk uncertainty, and run towards possibility. Our story begins, as all good stories do, on the White House lawn on the 4th of July. Now, it's a pretty heady scene. You can imagine it, right? To my right is Condoleezza Rice. To my left, the presidential dog, Barney. I was there with my father. He's an electrician from small town South Dakota. This is one of the most sincere, most hardworking men I've ever had the good privilege of knowing. I was surrounded by brilliant and able, intelligent coworkers in the middle of a presidential campaign. And unfortunately, despite being the most connected someone could be in the traditional networking sense, I was more focused on what was missing. You see, my father never had much money. 4 kids will do that to you. But when I would come home from some faraway place, we would hop in the truck and drive around our community, and he'd point at the projects that he had done. A light on a flagpole, a cross on a church, an athletic facility that was a result of time on the school board volunteering for community. There was a real and tangible nature to his legacy. In that moment, I considered what I might point to. We had spent tens of millions of dollars on campaigns I'd worked on. To varying degrees, I had been in 20 or more states, and yet I couldn't think of anything. I could think of communities that I'd left worse off. That's just honesty. Worse off than when I got there. But I couldn't think of anything that I would point to, anything of note. I've told this story before. I've told it many times, too many times, that I've often talked about how my first thought was, what's next? But if I'm being honest with you and vulnerable a little bit today, I was much more focused on the fact that I had everything I had dreamed of and could not have felt more alone. I was at the pinnacle of success, the peak of the political mountain, 100 feet from the President of the United States, and I couldn't have been more unhappy. Something was completely broken, and I knew I needed to fix it. I was at the center of activity of a thriving social network and a talented group of coworkers, and yet I laid awake at night and wondered if any of it actually mattered. If I didn't show up to work the next day, would anyone notice? Would anyone care? This was a time when the web and the social web were exploding. Now, Instagram and iPhones were a couple years away, but my FOMO, my fear of missing out, was real. And that BlackBerry, though dated now, was fully charged and ever present. But that day at the White House lawn, I just kept asking myself, how can I be more connected than ever and still be so alone? Now, this feeling isn't unique to me, and it certainly isn't new. In fact, it may be the oldest form of human anxiety. To stay alive, we know you need food and water. But to be fully human, you need to live in community. Many religions discuss the fact that sin is just a disconnection from the divine. The philosophers spend their entire lifetimes thinking about what it means to be human and thriving amongst others. But this also isn't a problem of the past. Every day I see someone celebrating the fact that they're going to take some time away from social media, talking about how courageous they are to spend 48 hours disconnected, meeting people in person without a phone in between them. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever felt surrounded by people and completely alone? Have you ever considered you have 5,000 Facebook friends and no one that you could call late at night if you really needed them? Maybe you feel a little bit like a fish out of water. Maybe you feel like people don't understand you, or they just don't, you're not doing what you were created to do. The problem is that transactions are not connections. And no amount of digital connection, cocktail party mixers, will replace the absence of an engaged community. So I chose to do something about it. I packed up, I left politics, I moved back to South Dakota. I'd always felt so connected to this place, this geography, the sky, the prairie. It always felt big enough that it humbled me, and yet it was also big enough that there was room for questions and creating and dreaming big dreams. Some chose to see it as empty. I chose and continue to choose to see it as filled with infinite possibility. I also had this sense that the good people of South Dakota had been waiting around for a decade and would throw a parade when I got back, carrying me through town on their shoulders. Sadly, not a word. Less than a year after I got back, I applied for a leadership program in my community. And word got back to me that despite the fact that my application was strong, they didn't think I would be around long enough to be worth the investment. To say this was a dark time is accurate. I generally felt like a man on an island, a man alone, a man without community. I was surrounded by 4 million people in this region and felt completely alone, and as a result, not fully human. But it was the work of Dr. James Fowler, a man that would later write a book called Connected, that led to my personal rebirth and my journey down a path of possibility. His theories of 3 degrees of influence completely blew my mind. It made sense that my active decisions would impact my friends, those people that I'm deeply connected to, those people that are intimate and around me and always there. We're the sum of those people. But the idea that we have impact not only on our friends, but our friends' friends, and our friends' friends' friends, means that everything matters. On matters ranging from health, from obesity, to whether people start or quit smoking, our decisions matter. On behaviors like altruism, creative risk, and innovation, we have an impact. Who we know doesn't just matter in the jobs we get. It matters in our general state of happiness and being. Everything we do has ripples through that network. And don't forget, those ripples come back to us. Imagine, and this isn't new agey psychobabble, this is science. Imagine that you act in a positive, generative way. You send ripples out through your community to your friends, your friends' friends, your friends' friends' friends. And they, in return, act more creative, or innovative, or collaborative, impacting you. Knowing this, I really had only one choice, and that choice was to connect. It started with the most unlikely of people, an intern named Mike Billiter. Mike was an intern that would seek me out, connect with me, inspire me, and be part of the founding of a creative nonprofit called ODA, before he went out on a journey with his wife, walking across the country to connect with other people. And he had a friend. His name was Andrew Brynjolfsson, a designer who designed from the heart and loved late nights and wacky ideas, which is my kind of guy. Then I met a community builder. His name was Joe Bartman. Joe Bartman is a small-town community development professional that has world-class conversational skills. A filmmaker, Joe Hubers. Joe crafts visual stories like the master craftsman. My daughter went to a Montessori school. It was led by a philosopher and his wife, Bobby George. Bobby challenged me to think about learning as a lifestyle and to ask big questions. And others just seemed to drop from the heavens, like Ellen McGirt. She was a journalist from New York who was passing through, developed a deep connection with this region, and never stopped coming back. As it turns out, you are alone until you're not alone, because these people live in community as well. There was Angela T-Wall. She's got enough enthusiasm for all of us, and her passion is celebrating others. There was Les and Mark Cotton. They're illustrators that live to create and create to live. They did these slides, not bad, right? We've got Rod Arnold. He's a native of Watertown right here. His passion is working with purpose-focused organizations and individuals. There's Jonathan Otis. He's a firefighter and beekeeper from Duluth. The first time we talked, he was brought to literal tears because he felt for the first time seen in his passion for community. There's Bobby Bowman. She's not a native of the community she lives in, but her sons were, and she wanted to build something special and better for them and for herself. There's Kadra Abdi, a Somali woman from Minneapolis, who's dedicated the next chapter of her career to addressing the blight of human trafficking in the Dakotas. There's Lars Leafblad, who publicly shares his journey of sobriety and his attempts to fulfill his deep, deep hunger for network building. There's my friend Altman Studeni. He's an artist that should and could be displaying his work in Soho, New York, but instead chooses to be here in Soda or Plankington, whatever you'd like to call it. Altman said that he would be the last one here if it meant preserving the stories of the creative talents and the people of this region. I'm leaving out so many. Justin, the neuroscientist, Meredith, the champion of smart girls, my own patient, intelligent, and extremely beautiful wife, Amy, but you get the point. I also connected with 8-year-old Hugh. Now, Hugh is a small town boy with supportive parents that read a book about a president with big ideas. He believed that he might just be made for big things. I never realized how critical play was to the man that I've grown up to be, my imagination, my creativity. I connected with 12-year-old Hugh. He had been told a year earlier that creativity and curiosity were not valued, and that being smart, wanting to learn, didn't make you special. But his 5th grade teacher, Jane Popowski, she saw him. She really saw him. And she was the boost that he needed at that point. I connected with 16-year-old Hugh Weber. Now, he was plenty confident and had a head full of big ideas and a complete inability to communicate with others. God bless his freshman English teacher, Doug Cheddar, that would give him words, a podium, and the power of voice, his own voice. He would start practicing inaugural speeches that year. I know, right? And those speeches always focused on having the opportunity to celebrate those people that had cheerled and championed him for so many years. And then I connected with 26-year-old Hugh, the guy on the White House lawn with his dad, the guy who felt completely alone. You remember, right? No community. It turns out I was so surrounded by community that I was drowning in it. Like the story author David Foster Wallace likes to tell about the young fish. Young fish is swimming along, minding his own business, and he crosses paths with an older fish coming his way. And the older fish looks at him and says, "Good morning, how's the water?" And the younger fish swims on a little bit further and says to himself, "What the hell is water?" I was so surrounded by it. It was so part of who I was. It was so present that it was invisible, right? It was a culture of creativity and innovation. I am the descendant of tinkerers and builders, folk artists and poets, designers and possibility thinkers all. My birthright was not political office. It was public service. My calling is not partisan leadership, it is virtuous leadership. Although I'm still working on the virtuous part. You can ask my brother, the pastor. I will never be president, but I am called to be present for my community. But these people, this community, they were making down payments on my legacy, the one I thought was lacking from before the day I was born and each and every day of my life without me knowing it. And my father's legacy wasn't in the things he built. Lesser men built skyscrapers and empires and put their names on them. My father's legacy was in the people that he invested in, relationships, community, these things that are lasting. This is what I inherited. This is what I'm choosing to leave behind, a thriving, emerging network of people seeking to make their communities and each other better. I want to share some basic math. I know it's early for math. On average, humans have 120 relationships that they can manage. These are our friends. We know their names. We probably know their birthdays. We know their flaws and foibles. We care about these people. But what we know and what we've learned from James Fowler is these 120 people also have 120 people. 14,400 people that they are directly impacting. And you, by virtue of network effects, are impacting as well. And those 120 people have their own 120 people. 1.728 million people that you are connected to. These are the people that you impact. But there's something more. It turns out that connection alone is not enough. To realize that you're connected to something bigger, it's not enough. You need to do something about it. To be the best possible version of yourself, to realize the dreams you have for you and your community, you must do. You must act. You must question. You must dream. You must do things. You must engage. And together, we must be bold. Connection is fed by engagement. We're born, grow, die, and are reborn again. We crawl, walk, run really fast, fall, and crawl again. We take risks. Sometimes we fail. Sometimes we succeed. But we risk. And we do this over and over and over again because it's what it means to be human. And when we're our best, when we're our very, very best, we do it together. By doing something, we become something. It becomes habit and practice and deeply integrated. And by virtue of networks and influences, everyone becomes something. Others become something. I have hosted bubble parades and barbecues. I have built 3 state networks and risked my house for the creatives of this region. I have hosted dinner parties and purchased a delivery truck to spread possibility as far and wide as I can. Because if you want to feel celebrated, you must celebrate. And if you want to feel loved, I recommend that you love. And as I found out, if you want to feel connected and part of a community, you must connect. But you need to decide actively. You've got to want to do it. This can't be passive. Connection and community do not knock at your door. You need to decide that your community is great, but it can be better. You need to decide that you are great, but you can be better. You need to decide that you are connected to something bigger than you, something special, extraordinary, really. And you need to commit to making it better, action by action, day by day. I suggest to you that you start in the middle. You jump right in. You could leave a bigger tip than you normally would. You can compliment a friend of me on Facebook. You can take your mom to lunch and really listen to her. Love you, Mom. Leave notes to your city on the sidewalks in chalk. Buy flowers for strangers, your wife, your daughter. Host a block party. Recruit a rogue gang of do-gooders whose only purpose is to practice random acts of possibility. And if I've got any advice to give you, buy a bubble machine. If you want life to be better, you have to be better. We are 1,310 miles away, 12 years removed, and a lifetime of experiences in between me and the White House lawn. But I feel more connected, more alive, and more fully human than I ever have been. And the good news? So are you. So, what are we going to do first? Thank you.